Okay, so welcome back. This is part three of the invitation conversation. So this one takes place about 2 weeks later than the one that you had just witnessed. So Lynn is off on a conference during this conversation, and Gary has rejoined us. And the question that we'll be exploring in deeper detail is slowing down and practicing deeper contemplation. Now that's a big one. I'm still really reverberating a lot from exploring that question. And again, I think it comes back to how do we change the financial system? How do we create economic equality? A lot of it is just slowing down and backing off of competitiveness, racing to be the first to do something, slowing down and practice deeper contemplation, which allows for deeper collaboration. So, welcome to part three of the invitation conversation. All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is Bridge Conversation Part 4. So welcome. We're going to be doing a quick check-in, and then we'll get into today's discussion. So I want to give a shout out to Lynn. Lynn, I hope you're enjoying the conference. We miss you, and really can't wait to see you again when you are able to return. So we're thinking about you, and yeah, that's it with that. So let's do a check-in. How are you arriving, and what are you bringing today? How are you arriving, and what are you bringing?
I'll go first because I am emotional.
Mm.
And it has to do with the bridge conversation. I think you all, I don't know if you're all aware, but my sister and I were interviewed both separately and together for a book that the national psychiatrist for NAMI has written. And he only has two stories. Most of them were individual interviews with challengers. But when he knows my sister, because my sister's a psychiatrist in Massachusetts where he lives, and they've known each other for many years. And so she told him about me. And so we did an interview separately and then together about our relationship as a psychiatrist having a sister who was bipolar. And he took pieces of that and he's put it in the book, and some of it she was questioning because the way he told the story made her look like the bad guy, and it's not the way the story happened. So she's been writing back and forth between me and him trying to fix that. And I was just reading some of what he wrote to her, what she wrote to him, a letter that she wrote to him. And I realized my sister really misunderstood some of what I said. But also, I realized what pain my family went through. She's writing to him about the confusion and the fear and the terror that they were feeling when I was first manic, really manic. And then she wrote psychotic. Am I breaking up? I don't know why that's happening. I don't want to get on the phone. This hasn't happened since I got my computer fixed. I maybe a little bit. I don't know why it's happening.
Okay.
And I don't remember myself as being quite psychotic. I seem to always have a sense of reality, but I really was, I think. I didn't act real strange. I just acted very manic as I remember it. But I did have thoughts that were pretty out there, I got to say. I just never went to believing they were true. I always thought maybe they were possibly true. And so it's really making me think about the importance of this work that we're talking about, that the misunderstandings that happen. Her main issue was that she wanted so badly to help me. She was only 18. And she has ruminated a lot about it as an adult. And she realizes in her ruminations how much she wanted to rescue me, even when she became a psychiatrist, how much she kept wanting to rescue me, and that she couldn't, and how she felt powerless, but that she had to be careful not to be my psychiatrist, which I have been aware of too. I've been very careful not to put her in that position of being my psychiatrist. But sometimes I call her and open up to her, and I feel like I have to be careful all the time with that. So I'm just feeling sadness having just read that before I got into the meeting. So that's what I'm checking in with, and that's what I'm bringing is my intense desire to bring clinicians and psychiatrists and therapists together. You know, if we ever do this, I would love her to be present because I think our relationship speaks a lot to this issue. So I'm bringing that wish and that hope that we can create something with this. Yeah. And I'm in.
Great. Thank you, Janet. And I'll open it up to Nefertiti or Gary to reflect back, what they heard, what they received from that. And then either one of you can also check in after reflecting.
I guess I can go. Janet, I really hear you and feel you and all the emotions, that you're putting forth. I can feel how deeply you embody your feelings. I think that's just something, what is so profound about you is that you fully embody your emotions. And I think that's just a beautiful gift that you're capable of doing that fully and sharing your deepest self so vulnerably and authentically and powerfully. And I see your power, I see your beauty, I see your heart, I see your gold, I see all of that. And when I look at you, I don't see someone who I think of with a diagnosis. I see you like I see me, a person with challenges. I don't think the term challenges or people with challenges is a human condition. I experience that every day in my life, just dealing with life ups and downs. And maybe your journey just runs deeper. Maybe that's what it's about, that you have at such a deeper place where you feel and it shows and it comes forth and it shines, and it shines through all of the pieces of you like a sparkle, like a diamond. So I hear you and see you. Thank you.
Beautiful, Gary. And we'll take a moment to let that land, let Janet feel that completely. And then when you're ready, I'll let you check in, Gary. How are you arriving and what are you bringing?
Well, I was arriving feeling somewhat scattered before this meeting because I am at work today and I am in the process of onboarding a new employee who is working with me. This is my first time in this new role as a director of development at my organization, that I now have an employee so my department has doubled because it was just me up until now. So we are doubled in size with this new person, and she is very excited. She just transitioned from working at another department and had turned in her resignation to leave the organization because she wasn't satisfied where she was working. And she was there less than a year. And the CEO recommended she speak with me. And I met with her 2 weeks ago. And she said, I don't want to leave the organization. I want to stay and work with you. So I felt that was really a big thing, a beautiful thing. I'm really grateful. And she felt my passion, and she said, you have a lot of passion. I can see that you really believe in what you do. and the work that you do. I want to work for you. She says, it's contagious. And I said, well, I'm glad you feel what I feel, because I feel like I'm carrying this alone, and I really could use support and help, because I can't do this by myself, and I need support. And today she started, first day. So I gave her a boatload of things to do that keep her busy for about a week. But I'll be checking in with her. But so I came to this meeting feeling a little bit scattered with all of that. But when you shared, Janet, it centered me immediately, because you were so present with your feelings and your emotions, and it just brought me to this place right now with all of you. And so I am bringing my full attention and my commitment to the work that I do in this field, and supporting all of us with challenges, including people that I consider, quote unquote, the role of clinician, professional. I'm certainly don't want to toss off the hat of challenges or challengers as if though I don't have them. I know I have them, because I feel them all the time. With that, I'm in.
Great, we'll let that land. And then Nefertiti, when you're ready, I'll have you reflect on Gary, and then do your check-in.
Good morning. Good morning. Man, I really appreciate how this conversation is flowing. Gary, I appreciate your ability to also be present with yourself and all the hats that you wear. And I heard that you're finding yourself growing. And also, I really appreciate the fact that along with all that we do during the day, you have come to a place of here and now. I'm also really, really, really appreciative of how you brought forth the word I find it is inclusivity. Like, you included yourself in the place that I include myself. I have challenges, I really, really, really appreciate that. And very excited for the growth that you're experiencing, congratulations. And yeah, I believe I've covered that. Is that an accurate description?
Very much so. Thank you, Nefertiti.
Thank you. I'm checking in. I literally just rolled into the driveway about a half hour ago, or prior to 12. Very excited to have this conversation, and realizing that it is one of those dichotomies, because the conversation, this bridge, is really, how can we be authentic in our conversations with others, whoever the others may be. If I'm at my doctor's office, if I'm at my bank, if I'm, checking out at the grocery store. Janet offered that desire for clarity. Like, how can I understand this person who's standing before me? And that's what I find so brilliant. So I'm arriving with a lot of things checked off of my own to-do list over here. We've had a performance this week with the mental health field that was really satisfying. My own desire to create a world where we all are included, and we can, have this freedom in all of our activities, is like becoming more formulated for me. I don't know if I shared in this group or another, because I've been in many groups, but I've been working with government entities and legal stuff to create freedom in my world. And I also have such deep admiration for experiential, like, sharing. Like, I want to share what I've experienced more so than anything else. And then that gives another person the possibility, hey, maybe me too. Hey, why not? So that's what I'm bringing. It's this awareness of moving forward and growing. And I'm arriving open-hearted, open-minded, and present. So with that, I'm checked in. Thank you.
Thank you, Nefertiti. What really landed with me as I was listening to your check-in was this awareness and this desire to be fully present, regardless of where you're at. Whether it be in kind of like a conscious conversation like this, or more of a unconscious transactional environment, like at the grocery store or at the bank. How do we bring more of ourselves, our true authentic selves to everything that we do, even in a system that, kind of compartmentalizes us a little bit. So I'm feeling a powerful, full presence with you. My reflection is that you are growing. It's like energetically growing, to be more consciously aware and to be more present in every aspect of your life. That's what I'm picking up on today. And how does that land? Does that feel accurate?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. How am I arriving today? I'm arriving really swimming in so much possibility, and that's exciting to me. I'm arriving with curiosity. I always know that whoever can show up, even if there's smaller groups like this, there's the four of us. It's perfect just the way it is. I've been reflecting a lot on our conversations with Edie, before she stepped away from this conversation. Reflecting on my exchanges with Lynette, and curious about re-engaging her into this conversation once we're completed our cycle. I'm really missing Lynn a lot. So I'm really aware of my I'll say it, it's sadness, because inclusiveness is very important to me too. Every single one of you is so important to me, and I'm feeling that, and I'm really valuing and cherishing Lynn's presence as well. So as we're moving forward and considering possibilities and how our values align with those possibilities, I'm very present to kind of like in this conversation, as with the last conversation, there's three of us challengers here and one clinician, even though the lines are very blurry. We all have challenges, like you said, Gary. So I'm curious. What I'm bringing is a sense of curiosity to make this a safer environment, to make it a more welcoming environment, especially for clinicians. So that's what I'm bringing today. So with that, I'm in, and Janet, I will ask you to reflect back from me. Okay, you're on mute.
Okay. The two words stood out first were possibility and curiosity.
Mhm.
And I heard possibility was aligned with this concept of values, which I love that we've been, our last talk, we were discussing values a lot. And I think you may have all seen, I emailed everybody back that I've never done this before, where we created a workshop, but first set a sense of values. I've never done it with anything. I just jump in and do what I do. So I really like that word values, that we're aligning ourselves. And I heard the word curiosity aligned with the word safety, because safety is when somebody uses the word safety in a sentence, it really stands out to me. But to hear it with curiosity, I like that. This it's like we're examining, we're delving in, and we're looking for that place where we can, keep asking ourselves, how can this be safe? I wonder, how can we really make this safe? I did hear your sadness about losing Edie. We don't know what's going on with Lynette, missing Lynn today, because Lynn is her part of this conversation. It's incredibly amazing. The other two words that I liked that I heard, and I heard it from Neff too, was the word inclusiveness. That's kind of a new word. Although I've always lived with that sense of how do I make people inclusive, I've never used that word in my head that much. So I hear you say it a lot, Mike, and I like that word. But my favorite word of everything you said was cherishing. That's kind of mostly what I hear is words. And the word cherishing has come up quite a bit in the last week. So that was like a cherry on the cake of what you had to say. And that's pretty much it I heard.
Great, thank you, Janet. Yes, what comes up for me as well too is as I'm understanding this process as well, and what it has to do with kind of brain chemistry or working with developing the brain as well too, is safety is in one quadrant, appreciation is in the other, curiosity is in another, and then desire is in another. So we're kind of like really I'll emphasize what my friend Trey says. We're actually exercising the brain a little bit. So if you have water, feel free to take a water break whenever you need. Trey often advises, eat some protein. So coming back to safety and curiosity, is something that exploring what it takes to be safe and exploring what we're curious about. There's a case to be made that it is developing the brain, and it's part of evolution.
What were the other two words you used?
So it's safety, desire, curiosity, and appreciation.
That's a curious one for me. If we could hit on that today, is desire. Because I'm reading, the Course of Love, the continuation of A Course in Miracles. And it does a lot of talking about desire and wants. And I get kind of confused about that. So if we could hit into that today, I'd like to
Sure.
do that.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes. So we're going to revisit our questions. So that's so we can look over the questions. I can pull them up too if that's needed. But when we ended last time, I'm going to pull up the questions here. When we ended last time, Janet, you had mentioned starting our conversation looking at the question. One moment, please, as I find that. There it is, Bridge. Conversation part 3. Starting with the question, does X allow us to slow down and practice deeper contemplation? So does X allow us to slow down and practice deeper contemplation? So we'll start with, checking in with everybody. Do we want to zero in on that question first today? So thumbs up for yes, 2 for safe enough to try, or a handout saying, I'm not feeling right about it, let's talk about it. So do we want to talk about the question? I saw Gary's thumb up there about slowing down and practicing deeper contemplation. Okay. Okay, great. All right. So let's talk about that. So our task for today is to see if we can come to consent around the top 5 questions out of the 17 or so that we came up. We can add questions if we want. We can change the wording if needed. But let's talk about that. Should that question, slowing down, deeper contemplation, is that in your top 5? I'd like to hear your thoughts about that.
I will tell you that almost every workshop or training I have done starts out with this, like, let's go, let's go, let's do this. Here's what we're going to do today. Even the ones I taught with Phil, a lot of them had that energy, because I am just convinced, there's some part of me that's convinced that if I stand in front of a group of people and slow down and create a space for deeper contemplation, they'll just get bored. They'll just shut down. They'll go to the bathroom. They won't want to do that. I love doing it. Almost every morning I meditate. I don't just meditate. I do a whole process. I do spiritual readings. I'm reading my old journals. I'm reading old journals. I really stop time, but I'm too scared to ask other people to do that.
Yes, Gary.
I got a hit came to me, Janet, while you're sharing that. And I hear you saying that if you would slow down, you would lose sort of the energy and momentum and possibly risk the engagement of your audience. But the way I'm hearing you present it is a little bit kind of black or white. I think there's shades of gray. And I believe that the way the question reads doesn't mean you have to immediately slow down. If your energy at that moment is, let's engage, there could be a place in your interaction and your workshop where you stop and take a breath. Maybe the moment, you don't want to be taking a breath when you're jumping off a diving board, because you might not go fully into the dive, right? You take a breath after you come out of the water, right? So when you do a workshop, that's not the time for you to slow down. Your natural inclination is to jump into it, which I think is perfectly right for you and makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm sure you pace yourself. I believe I have confidence in you that you have the capability of pacing yourself and finding when is the right moment to slow down and reflect. And so I think that it's possible to do both. And I'll say for myself, I do both. I believe they're both important.
Thank you. Yeah. You're right. That makes sense.
Two things come up for me around this question as well too, and thank you, Gary, for for validating that both is important, both are important, and that Janet can do both. Two things come up for me. One is that this entire conversation, staying with our values and staying with our questions, is slowing down and practicing deeper contemplation. As my friend Marta, who Janet, you and Nefertiti both met, she talks often about slowing down and getting to the center. So this entire conversation is, backing away from task and, really coming to alignment on that value, which I think slowing down is very important to that, because in my deeper contemplation, I'm becoming aware of what I think of as competitive values and collaborative values. Both are important, but so much emphasis on the competitive, the sprint, the task orientation. It kind of pulls. It almost kind of has like a black hole effect. It kind of pulls everything into that energy, where that sense of freedom, that sense of being able to slow down and contemplate kind of gets pulled into that energy. The way this kind of manifested itself for me personally recently was we had an opening conversation about collaboration with the Collaborative Innovation Institute, And my reflection was, I'm curious to see how everybody does when topic gets thrown out of the window and all that is left is how we interact with each other, and how we reflect, how we come to consensus on values. And I stopped. And and one other thing is, how comfortable can we get in silence? How comfortable can we get in inactivity? Well, the older gentleman who is the founder of a major organization, he jumped right in and said, Mike, you know how I hate silence. So we're going to do this and this and this and this and that and that and that and that. It was never kind of addressed what happened there in that moment. But what it made me feel like in that particular moment in time is this group at the moment is not capable of doing that. And that's I think that's something that needs to be addressed. And I'm kind of thinking that question is in my top 5, and we'll see how it plays out. But that question is pretty important to me personally. So that's my reflection on it at the moment.
Wow. I want to reflect what I heard you share. Out of all of the numbers we had, this was my number 6. I only chose top 6. So this one was number 6. But I'm really hearing about how going down doesn't necessarily have to look a certain way. And even though it's not something that we may be used to doing, it's worth the time to try it out. When you said that you've had the experience, Mike, of having people not want to be in silence, perhaps they're just, acknowledging what they feel they're comfortable with. And, that's a pretty vulnerable space to be in, even though it's most likely they have silent times. We're just not around when it happens. So another way that these questions came forth for me was what I appreciate asking myself this question, not only in a conversation with another, but even with myself. So if I'm doing activity, does this activity allow me to slow down and practice deeper contemplation? I resonate so much, and I appreciate how, Janet shared. I can relate. I too have not practiced contemplating values prior to joining activities in my younger years. Or perhaps it wasn't a deep contemplation over, the values. Like, we had an interesting conversation when we got together last time, about safety and validation and agreement. How are these words being understood by everyone who's involved with the activity? So I really I appreciate how contemplation can take different forms, and I really feel like it's something, the words come to mind, what's natural versus what's normal. So although it may be normal for us to feel like we have to go, 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 maybe it's more natural to have that and the pause to reflect, the ebb and the flow, so I think it's a question worth being in our top 5. Thanks.
I'm thinking that when you consider the issue of safety, a lot of people don't feel safe with silence or contemplation. A lot of clinicians, I've met many clinicians that I've led workshops for clinicians, And they don't like the slower stuff and the, the more peaceful kind of stuff. Even some of them don't like the creative stuff. I'm thinking about what time Phil and I led a workshop on AIDS for healthcare professionals once. And we were doing role playing and stuff where had someone talking to the illness, to the AIDS. And a lot of people in the room thought that was like really creative, and other people just had a terrible time with it. But it was a more contemplative kind of exercise. It really made you think about AIDS, and it can be done with anything. And I'm so sensitive to that. Like, I can feel it when it's happening in the room. Sometimes I can feel who's uncomfortable with what and stuff. And I've had to learn to shut some of that down. But as a facilitator, it's been a little scary for me when I sense that's happening, when I'm slowing things down and people are getting uncomfortable. I feel as if this ought to be one of the five, but I'm having resistance because of this fear.
I just had a thought I wanted to share. I noticed that when I do work with people, with clinical work, and I do have a few private clients I work with, and also I do some work with Janet when we do the Emotions in Motion group, and also some of the men's work I do. That when someone is really activated in a lot of thoughts and feelings, and they're really processing a lot in their head, in my judgment, I will invite them to take a breath and stop and slow down and get in touch with what are they really feeling. And I also notice that I do that with myself. I'm more functional. I can tell you that I probably do it more with others than I do it with myself. And so I certainly want to be more consistent and I would say hold myself accountable in terms of what I judge to be a valuable way to be present. And I think that it's my experience is that when one is in their full, when they're in their body and having a full body experience as opposed to a head experience, they're more present. I'm more present when I'm in my body and I'm experiencing fully what I am feeling. My belief is that will draw people closer to me as opposed to pushing people away. And when I can come from that place, being authentic in what I'm feeling, I think I'm more real. And I experience that with others too. When someone truly feels their emotion, and when Janet, when you started this meeting, you were full of deep, powerful emotions in your body, and I felt closer to you at that moment than I do normally. And I think that kind of if we're talking about building relationships and connections, I think that it's vital. It's kind of part of the connective tissue to relationships, to have this kind of capacity to experience the depth of our presence, and that moment of stepping into our self and fully deeply reflecting, I think, is a critical component of building relationships. And we're talking about building bridges, connecting to one another. So I think it is really almost like the glue, the connecting glue in relationships. That's how important I think it is.
Gary, I want to reflect. I'm sorry, Jen, go ahead.
Gary, was this one of the ones that you actually chose for your 5? Interesting.
Yeah, Gary, I wanna reflect how profound and powerful that reflection is too. Being in the head as opposed to being fully present in the body. What some of the conversations I have been involved with, what that seems to point to or to indicate is all of the mental activity is kind of electrical, where the heart center or the full body awareness is more magnetic. Where you had said something about being able to draw people to you, and a lot of our Western culture is, all about kind of like that electrical, being in the headspace, being strategic and all of that. But, being emotionally aware or energetically aware, kind of taps into that magnetic type of energy. It really naturally lends itself to one of the other questions we discussed last time as well about holistic practicing, holistic practices as well too, where that's very uncertain, very very scary territory for people who are used to living in their minds. To become comfortable and familiar with emotions enough, to be able to tap into more of that magnetic energy, that more of that yin energy as opposed to that electrical yang energy. So I wanted to reflect back that was screaming at me as you were describing that. So thank you. And here we are in that contemplative place.
I'm looking at these. There's so many, each one is like very powerful, but I'm thinking that some of them lend themselves to others. Like if you did have that slowing down and deeper contemplation, that would make it more holistic. If you did have deeper honesty and authenticity, which was one of the ones I chose, you would have a space for lightness and laughter. Because I'm trying to figure out, well, which ones would I cut out that I picked to have other ones, but you know what I mean? To let in space for other ones. And I'm realizing that some of them, if you had certain ones of these, you would automatically probably have other ones of these happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and they're all connected because they came out of the flow of a previous conversation we all had as well too. So yeah.
So I was really amazed at the fact that when you even brought forth, I'm all over the place, but one thing is that we're actually doing this now. Like that just again came to mind in this moment as we're sitting here, that we are actually slowing down to practice deeper contemplation. So, and also these conversations, like even though they're full challengers and clinicians, there's just so much value in doing it with the self. It's really, yeah, profound.
Look at
I'll
the
be right
work.
back. I'm having pain in my knee. I'm going to go get an ice pack.
Okay. I'm gonna quickly look at the wording of that question because let me get rid of that. There we go. So I'm gonna look at the wording of that question because the question is that's practice holistic behavior. Ways to explore, grow deeper honesty and authenticity. Here it is. X, allow us to slow down and practice. Okay, good. I'm glad that there's that word practice in there, which is, it's one thing to understand it intellectually. There's a jackhammer right outside my door right now. But to actually practice it, being able to be in situations where we can practice it is something that I'm finding very valuable. So yeah. So let's weigh in on that. How would you feel if we included that as part of our top 5? Yes, safe enough to try, or
well, can I ask you what we have so far?
Mm-hmm.
What were other ones?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will also reaffirm and also repeat that we can use all of the questions, and we will use all of the questions in one version of this activity going forward. But for the short version, because I think we're going to need the short version, because we're attempting to do in 12 hours, 6 sessions at 2 hours, what normally most people have trouble getting through 8 sessions at 3 hours, so a full 24 hours. So we're trying to do in half the time what takes most people 24 hours here. So, yeah, what we have, or what we've discussed so far is, oh, I keep pushing that wrong button. So the questions that we have discussed and that we actually kind of gave a sentiment poll on was encouraging deeper honesty and authenticity. So all 4 of us said yes on that last time, and it was also included in one of Gary's top choices. Number 2 was, does X explore ways to challenge growth? Now that was originally worded as identifying and solving problems. So we changed the wording of that, and the 4 of us that were present said yes to that. The other one that we actually voted on was, does X help us practice holistic behavior? So that one is still kind of an iffy, because 3 of us said safe enough to try, and only 1 of us said yes. So so as time is allowing, that's one of the questions that are still just on the safe enough to try, section, rather than it feels right, definitely. So I want to be sensitive to that as well too.
We didn't choose number 5. Allow different perspectives.
Well, we're in the time that we have today, and we don't have to get all 5 today as well too. So that's I also want to say, yeah, I mean, the task is to try to come to consent on 5. But it's not a do or die or a life and death situation if we don't. So if we put since we discussed thoroughly the question, slowing down and practicing deeper contemplation, how would we feel about including that question in as part of our top 5 if the stakes were, kind of discarding the rest of the questions? That's not the stakes, but if it was.
I'm really struggling with it, but I do think it's a very important thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I'm not sure that. How did you word the one about the problems? How did we change that?
Yeah, originally it was, does X allow us to identify and solve problems? We changed the wording of that. Does X allow us, let me look at it again. Does X allow us to, ways to challenge growth?
Allow us ways to challenge growth.
Challenge growth, yeah.
Another thing I wanted to also share is how that piece of vital connectivity that Gary brought forth. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And number 8, we have number 8, right? Honesty and authenticity. What did we say about the safety one? That is such a big thing for me. Number 10.
We touched on it. I'm going to make a proposal. Rather than go into another question, how do we feel about making a decision about this question?
I would like it on our top 10. Top 5.
I would agree. It's all my fear that keeps me from saying yes. I have fear that we're taking up your time, Gary, because you're doing such very important work, making money for your organization. Everywhere I go, I have issues about you're raising children over there, you guys. We're taking your time from your children. I'll come up with a million reasons why not to slow down and contemplate. And I realize that you as parents need to teach that to your children. So, and Gary's now having grandchildren, and I don't have children, so I think it is an important one, and I'm going to go.
Right. And Janet, I also want to say too, it's okay to say safe enough to try, because what I would like to encourage as we move on too is honesty. And usually when something is not clear or if something is still not feeling completely right, it's okay to say safe enough to try. I have that conversation a lot, during this process as well too. Some people, there's a strong hit yes, that's good. If there's still kind of that feeling of, ooh, I'm not quite sure, it's okay to say safe enough to try. And if there's a strong no, that's okay too. That is okay too. So I want to say that, especially in the decision-making process, as we go deeper into this, your honesty about it is actually going to provide more clarity. I also want to reflect to something that you had said as well too about your concern about Gary, taking a break from what's making him money. One of the possibilities on the table is how to generate an income from doing stuff like this, doing conversations like this. So there's a pathway that will help address that as well too. So anyway, I just wanted to interview. Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
I just want to respond to Janet, what you just said. And I appreciate you were wanting to I don't want to say the word take care of me, but to be concerned about me. And I do want you to also trust that I'm capable of taking care of myself, and that my choice to be here is my choice. And it also makes me, I believe, more effective and functional in my other roles, because my taking this time out to be present helps me to slow down and to be more effective in the other work that I do. And interestingly, I told the person who I'm orienting today that I will be unavailable for 2 hours between 1 and 3 because I'll be in a focus group. And I said that's part of what I'm doing is working in help. And I'm in the mental health field, so it's not like I'm off on the side betting horses.
What did you say? Did you say petting horses?
Yes, I'm not going off somewhere betting horses.
Betting horses.
Yeah, betting on horses. Yeah.
Oh, betting on horses.
Betting on horses, right? Betting on horses. I'm doing. This is part of the work I do, and the person who I'm orienting is working in a mental health organization, and I said this is part of a focus group to work with people in the whole area of deepening conversations and understanding one another, and that's something I want to be able to do better in my role here.
I have to tell you guys what I'm getting in touch with. And I honestly think that I represent consumers when I say challengers, when I say this. It comes from this deep feeling of imposing. My mother used to say every time, like almost every time I walked out of the door, she'd say, "Now, Janet, don't do drugs, don't talk to strangers, and don't impose on people." It was a big, big message from her. And my experience of a lot of consumers is that we feel that way. We feel so deformed and fucked up with our mental illness that I'm talking more like not so much you guys, but the ones that I'm working with, that they're always sorry for everything they're doing. They always feel like they're an imposition. And so when you offered Mike to run this group, I immediately felt like I was imposing on your time. And this is a big thing, I realize, for us to look at if we do this kind of workshop, this work with people, is to look at how consumers feel like they're imposing on their clinicians every time they need to call up. The day after my surgery, I had this horrible dream 2 days after my surgery a couple of weeks ago. I had to call my therapist, emergency. I think I told you guys, I felt like I was mentally ill again. And I was back in the year, 1979. And I felt like I was imposing on her, and she was wonderful. She really helped me get through it. But I go through life with that feeling a lot of the time, even though I know that you guys are so on board with the show. Sometimes I feel like I'm imposing on your lives. We're not making money with it yet, or not now during COVID, and we weren't making much before. And I just feel I carry this weight. This is Capricorn. You guys, Gary has strong Capricorn in his chart. He's got Cap rising like I do, and all three of us have Capricorn rising. And then Mike is a Capricorn. I have Mars in Capricorn. It's this feeling of carrying this weight of the world on my shoulders and not wanting to bother anyone. And my mental illness is a problem for people. I don't want to push that on anyone. And then reading that letter from my sister, feeling like I pushed that on my family. So this is something that I think clinicians, I'm glad you said that, Gary, that you said that yes, you still work in mental health, even though you're doing a different element with it, that clinicians need to get this, how much we're embarrassed by who we are and what we have to deal with. This is really a great conversation. I didn't realize that I still carry this with me. Not as bad, but it's still there. And it's being brought up because of what I read today.
And I want to reflect something back too, where you said that, my doing, the facilitation for these kinds of conversations, I want to say it's not an imposition. You are giving me an opportunity. This is like one of the opportunities that my entire life has been leading up to. So I want to thank you and show you appreciation, for helping develop this kind of space, because I want to affirm that it's the opposite of an imposition. You have given me an opportunity that is life affirming, and one of the greatest opportunities of my life. So thank you for that.
Wow. Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you.
One more thing.
Mhm.
What you speak, Janet, is a voice to those voiceless people. I myself have felt the ways you've expressed, but I was not aware of how to say it. So it's like what we spoke about, that vital connection of humanness that we all have. So thank you.
Good morning. This is August 8th, 2022. It is about 6:03 in the morning. Beautiful Monday morning. Good morning. So I will go right into my check-in for this segment. I'm checking in feeling pretty inspired, because as I look at this whole body of work that we're producing, I realize it can be overwhelming. It's a whole nother world. And it's best to just go slow, take it slow. So I'm arriving feeling very appreciative of those first conversations, how brave it takes just to come into an appreciation conversation with someone. So I've been having a lot of conversations with different organizations, different people as of late, who are starting to kind of look at what this is, what what the 2x2 algorithm is, what are these conversations about, what is this business model, what does what is a time bank, and they often ask me, well, how do we even start that conversation? How do we even get into it? And the first is just spend an hour in appreciation, no agenda, just deeply listen, ask people, what inspires you, and then just tune in to what resonates, what you appreciate, ask clarifying questions. And, the only agenda is to mutually decide if you want to continue into a possibility conversation. So I'm very appreciative of that basic first step, which we'll talk a little bit about today. So what am I bringing? So I'm bringing the questions today. I think I slightly changed the questions that I ended with yesterday, but what I'm bringing with today is we talked about what the universal time exchange is. How do we change it? Where do we start to look to start changing it? So we're asking deeper questions like that. What kind of systems have to be in place, or what kind of systems do we have to start thinking about in order to change that universal time exchange rate, which, as we talked about, over the last couple of days, is arguably, 25 hours just to make up the value of $1. If we're just going by debt alone and not even including GDP, then it's 16.6 hours to make up $1 American. So yeah, so something's kind of rumbling here. We're starting to have that conversation about how do we change this social economic system, and we're going to start to look at that today. One of the questions I think we asked previously was, what do we want to change the universal time exchange to? If it's 6 cents or 4 cents an hour, what's fair? What do we change it to? And that's where we have to come up with new invitations, new agreements. So I'm bringing those questions today about where do we start to look to draw inspiration, or to where are the models, where are the role models for changing the system. And what I keep landing on is something called ancestral math. So I am going to go to my screen share here. All right. So I'm going to read the clipping here. Ancestral mathematics. In order to be born, you needed 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 second great-grandparents, 32 third great-grandparents, 64 fourth great-grandparents, 128 fifth great-grandparents, 256 sixth great-grandparents, 512 seventh great-grandparents, 1,024 eighth great-grandparents, and 2,048 ninth great-grandparents. For you to be born today from 12 previous generations, you needed a total of 4,094 ancestors over the last 400 years. Now think for a moment. How many struggles, how many battles, how many difficulties, how much sadness, how much happiness, how many love stories, how many expressions of hope for the future did your ancestors have to undergo for you to exist in this present moment? So let's be with that for a moment. Just for 400 years, 12 generations, that's over 4,000 people, 4,000 acts of procreation to make you. So now let's expand on that a little bit. If you go back 20 generations, so maybe 600 to 800 years, right down at the bottom there, I have written 1,048,576 ancestors, acts of procreation. So it took 1 million people just to make you. There's 1 million people, and that's just going back 20 generations, 20 degrees of separation. 1 million people, 1 million people exist in some sense in your DNA. So all we're looking to do is reverse that process. One life touches 1 million lives. And let's focus on doing that 1 hour at a time. Say like an appreciation conversation. Maybe an appreciation conversation is that act of procreation. 1 hour at a time. I'm going to take this concept just a little bit further. Okay, so I have a little picture here of cells dividing. This is cellular mitosis. It's also known as binary fission. There's another picture of some cells. Your body has 37.2 trillion cells at any one given time. So you think of that act of procreation. The sperm meets the egg. It's a cell. It divides again, it divides again. So even in that one act of procreation on the cellular level, There are many acts of procreation, if you will, as the cell keeps dividing and dividing again to eventually make up 37.2 trillion cells in the human body. It kind of puts in perspective how powerful these natural, simple acts of procreation are. So how do we take something that's natural, a natural process, a natural phenomenon, and take it and apply it to something that's psychological, say the financial system? So let's say just 1 hour spent in appreciation touches 2 lives. Hopefully the result of that conversation is both people feel compelled to continue the conversation with someone else and invite someone else into an appreciation conversation, which could lead to a possibility conversation, which could lead to an invitation conversation, and on down the road. 2 hours now lead to 4 lives touched. 3 hours leads to 8 lives touched. And not only 8 lives touched, but 8 hours are now taken out of a system, where control is the agenda. And now maybe a little more reciprocity is starting to develop. So 4 hours, 16 lives and 16 hours are touched. 5 hours, 32 lives and 32 hours are generated. 6 hours, 64 lives are touched and 64 hours are generated. 7 hours, 128 lives touched, and also 128 hours are generated. 8 hours, 256 lives and hours. 9, 512 lives are touched and 512 hours generated. Oh, and that's where we're at right now. I think, if my calculations are correct, we're in our 9th hour at this moment in this presentation. So right now, hopefully the screen outside of the screen is reflecting something like that. But yeah, we're there. So 10 hours, 1,024 lives touched and hours generated. Now we're getting up into the thousands. 11 hours or 11 degrees of separation. 2,048 hours generated and 2,048 lives are touched. 12 hours, now we're in the 4,000s, 4,096. 13 degrees, 13 hours, 8,192. 14, 16,384. 15, 32,768. 16, 65,536. Now we're starting to see the power of that compounding effect. That's all it takes is one person to have 2 conversations, and those 2 people to have 2 conversations. This is the 2x2 algorithm. 17, now we're getting into the 100,000s, and the compounding effect just speeds it along. Now we're into 262,000 hours and 262,000 lives touched. 19, that compounding effect is coming in. Things are moving faster. We're at 500,000 now, 524,000. So that when we get to the 20th degree, we're at 1,048,576. That was the number that was revealed earlier about just going back 20 generations. It took 1,048,576 acts of procreation, and that's just going back 20 generations to make up you. Changing the system is a breeze. Changing the system is not complicated. All we have to do is reverse the process. Reverse the process, and that starts with just the appreciation conversation. That's where we start to look, to start changing. Now, this is just one person creating a ripple effect that takes 1 million hours out of an extractive system and puts it into a regenerative system. Now, we haven't assigned a value, a financial value to those hours yet, but just think about that for a moment. One person creating a ripple effect that takes 1 million hours out of a system that is demanding, that is toxic, that is not so life affirming, taking that out of that system and now putting it into a new, I don't want to know if I want to call it a system, but a new way of being. You know, if every person is starting that ripple effect, and we're talking into the millions and the billions of hours taken out of that system, something's got to give. Something's got to change. And there's no guns shot. There's no bombs blowing up. It's just the simple trickle effect of one appreciation conversation at a time. I really wanted to leave you with that idea. Where to look for inspiration is in your own ancestry. You know, a million lives, 1 million acts of procreation went into just making you. And what we're proposing is that your life touches 1 million others in your own way. We're just starting this conversation. All right, so I am going to go back to ourworld.org and log in. Once again, services, report hours. Remember, you provided this service. This is a service you are giving not only to the Karmic Margin Call Project, but to humanity, to the world. So every hour counts. Okay, so today is 8/8. And that's 1 hour, 1 member, Karmic Margin Call Project. And I think we are on invitation part 2, but first we're going to go to, my mind's drawing a blank here, classes, lessons, tutor. And this is a presentation workshop, invitation, conversation, part 3. Let me spell conversation correctly. And then you just press on record transaction and you'll get credit for this hour today. And I also want to emphasize too, if you're needing to pause our videos and think and reflect, take notes, go back and listen to something. I realize in a lot of these that I talk very fast and the sound quality sometimes goes in and out. You know, count that time as well. So if it took you 1.5 hours, if it took you 2 hours to get through this, you know, it all counts. Log it accurately. All right, so I am done for today. Tomorrow, we will start exploring the questions. What is the difference between a core economy and a market economy? You know, what is a margin call? Why do we call this effort the Karmic Margin Call? And what principles do we first have to look at in the market economy to start to change things, to start to change the nature of it for more equality and more life affirmation? So, so those are our questions tomorrow, the differences between core and market economies. You know, we're going to talk about what is a margin call and why do we call ourselves Karmic Margin Call? And also, what are the principles within the market economy that we have to work with? You know, how do we grow a core economy out of what I call the soil of the market economy? So I'll see you next time. Have a great day, great night, great life. Talk soon.